You know you're an Austinite when your favorite bar, restaurant, coffee shop, or corner store closes and is replaced with something new. Think Tom's Market, or Trudy's, or Skylark Lounge. But there's some people here that actually fight to hold on to our history. And today on CityCast Austin, we're bringing back a conversation with someone who does just that. It's Tuesday, May 6th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, everyone. I am with Megan King, Policy and Outreach Coordinator for Preservation Austin. Preservation Austin is an organization that is focused on preserving Austin's architectural history. Is that correct?
Yes, history and culture. Traditionally, preservation has focused a lot on buildings, and we certainly are invested in buildings, but really it's the people that make the buildings special. And so we kind of see preservation as the tie between places and people. We definitely are not just focused on buildings.
What are the barriers to historic preservation in Austin?
There's a lack of appetite sometimes to preserve. I think people don't necessarily think of Austin as a very historic place. Like, you know, San Antonio has a very strong preservation culture. Obviously, the pace of development in Austin is astronomical. And so that kind of smash and grab mentality partnered with this idea that there's nothing that special here, it makes the pace of demolitions and turnover and displacement that much greater. I think also there's a barrier in people's minds about what preservation is about. And they think it's about like fancy old buildings that very important politicians or businessmen lived in. The sort of history and cultural piece is more in my more expansive and captures a broader idea of history. You know, we have legacy businesses here in Austin, but they don't necessarily equate like going to a legacy business and supporting them with your dollar as preservation, but it is, you know,
right,
because you're helping them stay alive.
Can we give a quick example of what a legacy business is?
Like your classic Austin businesses like Cisco's, Deep Eddy, Green and White Grocery, the Paramount Theater.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mix of, you know, institutions like the Paramount and the Driscoll.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also had places like Carousel Lounge and the Herb Bar in Bolden. These smaller places that are a bit more niche or maybe more neighborhood specific that not everybody in town knows about.
I think that sometimes there is a misconception that just because something is old, that means we're trying to preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we as a city decide what gets preserved and what is lost? Like, how as a city do we decide this is what we want to keep?
Yes. Any historic preservation program has a set of criteria that they designate structures based off of. So in Austin, those criteria are architecture, historic association, landscape feature, archaeology, and community value. So in order to become a city of Austin, and those are really broad categories. Mm-hmm. In Austin, you have to meet 2 criteria in order to get recommended. And then you also have to have integrity, meaning like, not that the building has to be fancy or nice or even in good condition. It can be in bad condition, but still have integrity because it has its historic features. So they're evaluated on that basis. The city does surveys. Again, like the surveys are just a tool. They don't force anybody to do anything, but they basically, a survey will take a neighborhood context and say, you know, like this is significant. We should make a historic district here.
Why does it matter if a city preserves its historic places?
People need a sense of rootedness and familiarity. It's like a basic psychological need.
Yep.
And Austin has some really amazing places. It's such a unique, interesting, fun place to live. And people, rightfully so, get attached to those familiar places that make them feel like they're at home or like it's the Austin that they know. And like in a more like moral sense, you know, the cost of living here is going up like crazy. People are getting pushed out all the time. The people that made this city, the place that it is, can no longer afford to live here. The people that made it cool, interesting, desirable, they're gone, or they're leaving, or they're going to be gone soon, you know?
Right.
And preservation is a really important tool in the bigger matrix of anti-displacement.
Right.
Because again, like the smash and grab, like pro-development climate, it's not bad that we're getting new housing. We need more housing. But how do we get it is, I think, where we're like let's make this a bit more thoughtful.
If I'm a developer and I want to build a new apartment complex and more housing, how does the city ensure that I'm not destroying something historic as a developer before I build something new?
The way historic review goes is if there's a property older than, I think, 45 years old that is being demolished, it gets flagged for historic review. And then the people at City Hall Planning Department will do research into that building, kind of just like a cursory sort of historic background search and like who lived there, any news articles that reference the address or the people that lived there. And then they, from that basis, make a determination of whether or not they'll administratively approve the demolition because there's no historic association. And that's, I would say, most properties get that rubber stamp because it's like, if it doesn't meet even one of the criteria for designation, but if it meets one and potentially two, then the Historic Landmark Commission will review it and then they'll decide and they make a recommendation and then it just works up the chain from there.
We heard about a few cases where it says Preservation Austin was in support of certain decisions that happened in the city. I want to talk a little bit about that power. What kind of power does Preservation Austin have?
We are the only citywide preservation nonprofit in town. So our reach is citywide.
That's wild to me.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
I know. And there's Six Square on the east side. There's East Austin Conservancy, which is a little bit more like financially oriented, but still related to our work. But we're the only ones. We've been around since 1953. But I think being the only citywide preservation nonprofit, we have a unique voice that not very many other organizations have. So we have a kind of global, like, eyes on the whole city perspective.
So I'm a native East Austinite. And, when I was working at City Hall, there was a lot of working together to try to keep certain things, specifically on the east side that you guys were really helpful with. And so part of your work is sometimes homes or just old houses. One structure like this was the Sinigson House on 1100 East 2nd Street, right? And so in that case, please correct me if I'm wrong. As I understand it, the owner wanted to be able to sell the house without restrictions on its future development. But there was another side that was fighting to keep the house intact. Who was fighting to keep the house intact and why?
Well, mainly just us in that case.
Why? Why is it even your business?
I mean, we go to bat for residential properties in East Austin a lot because these are the places that house working class Black and brown people for a really long time. It's tied to anti-displacement, but it's also tied to the stories we want told, right? The everyday stories of East Austin. But in the case of the Sinigson House, the owner came before the Historic Landmark Commission requesting that it be demolished. It was surveyed in 2016. A big historic resource survey of East Austin was done. And the Sinigson House was recommended as an individual City of Austin landmark, which is it's basically the highest honorific a building can receive because
it's a big deal.
It's a zoning change that would prevent the person who owns it from demolishing it or making inappropriate changes. That case was recommended by the Historic Landmark Commission for landmarking. It was then recommended by Planning Commission, which does not very consistently vote in favor of preservation. So then it moved up to City Council with both of those recommendations. And even on council, there was a bit more of an appetite than usual to designate this property. Ultimately, it failed because there's just kind of reliable no votes for designating over an owner's wishes on council. So it didn't get designated.
When they are given this landmark status, they can still sell it.
They can sell it, yes.
They just can't demolish it.
Exactly. If they wanted to make changes to the exterior that were beyond basic maintenance, if they wanted to replace the windows, if they wanted to add an addition, it would have to get approved by the city.
Hey y'all, it's your last chance to see what the Constitution means to me at the Zach Theater. And if you're on the fence about seeing it because maybe it sounds kind of dry or you're not a history person, let me try to change your mind. This Tony Award-winning play is less than 10 years old and it's autobiographical. The playwright Heidi Schreck dives deep into what the Constitution has meant to her and to 4 generations of women in her family. It's a comedy and it's also been called soul restoring. I don't know about y'all, but I could do with a little soul restoring right about now. You can see What the Constitution Means to Me on stage at the Zach Theater now through May 11th. Get your tickets at zachtheater.org. That's ZACH theater.org. What do former President Lyndon B. Johnson and the movie Jaws, yes, that Jaws, have in common? A new exhibit at the LBJ Presidential Library. Before he wrote Jaws, Peter Benchley was President Johnson's speechwriter, and this temporary exhibit is all about Benchley's journey from the White House to best-selling novelist to ocean conservationist. Talk about a fascinating career. Don't miss this chance to learn all about Benchley and Johnson's environmental legacy, how Jaws changed our understanding of sharks, and much more. From the White House to the deep ocean, LBJ, Jaws, and Conservation will be at the LBJ Presidential Library from now through October 19th. Find out more about the exhibit at lbjlibrary.info/Jaws. What does your work look like in practice?
Yeah.
So like, where do you, because you mentioned like the Planning Commission and then the Historical Landmark Commission, where do you guys step in and how do you wield your influence in those moments?
Preservation has this reputation of unfortunate reputation of being a reactive movement where, oh no, something's being demolished, we have to scramble, we have to panic, we have to do something. So that's kind of like the way a lot of people interact with preservation. They don't see the kind of behind the scenes stuff, more proactive stuff. So in the case of the Sinnickson House, it was a bit unusual. We kind of just went to bat for that one once it made it to city council, because I think there was just some levers that were not pulled at the right times. But basically, because it was recommended by the survey as a landmark, we really wanted to stick our neck out and say, look, you guys, why are we spending money on these surveys? Look at the surveys and take them seriously, because they're important planning tools. Normally, kind of the sequence, the workflow would be, we will see the case come up at the Historic Landmark Commission. We will usually write a letter, and I will speak and testify. We also have good relationships with pretty much everybody on the Historic Landmark Commission. So we know them, we talk to them. We know a few people on Planning Commission, and obviously we're connected to people on council too. So we're kind of always in dialogue.
Okay.
We also do a lot of like behind the scenes, proactive policy development with council.
Okay, so let's talk about the proactive stuff.
Yeah. We worked with several members on council to get a preservation bonus adopted into the home ordinance. And so what the preservation bonus does is in exchange for preserving an existing home, the incentive you receive in return is the right to increased development entitlements, basically. So it makes it easier for you to develop. You may be more profitable. Basically, it's another tool that would incentivize preservation for people or developers who might never have thought to preserve, because really the math, it's so much easier to demolish than it is to preserve. Wiping the slate clean seems like is the easiest option in a lot of senses, but there's obviously a huge sustainability component to preservation. And by just keeping this existing fabric, we're keeping a lot of waste out of the landfills, because like 25% of our municipal landfills are just construction waste and debris, you know?
Wow.
Crazy amount, really crazy amount.
Oh my God.
Residential demolitions in the city are like over 600 a year, you know?
Jeez.
So it's just a lot of waste, a lot of, embodied carbon that's lost, and then just like fabric of the city that people cherish. So now we have this preservation bonus that it still needs refinement in order to make it fully functional, and still needs some more pieces of it.
I love that.
Another one that we did was house relocation was historically a really common practice in Austin. If you go kind of anywhere in like central Austin, including like central East Austin, you'll find that a lot of the houses there were actually relocated like in like the 20s and 30s from some other neighborhood. It was a really easy practice, common practice in town, but again, with the increasing bureaucratic red tape and also with the value of land in Austin, it's really hard to relocate within city limits. So we worked on this resolution with Ryan Alter's office that would make relocation within the city of Austin easier. Relocation is still a way, it's not perfect preservation by some preservationist definition, but it's certainly better than that history, that Austin story leaving for another city and gives more people more choices about what to do with historic buildings. Because a lot of people will just give up homes that they don't want on their property and put them on like Facebook Marketplace. Be like, this is going for free if you want to take a house, you know?
Wow.
Because it's just, to them, they'd rather see someone take it and it's not worth anything to them anyway.
Right.
So they're just like, yeah, or they'll sell it for really, really cheap. And so then kind of the cost to demolish versus relocate, again, like they're not so disparate that it's like impossible.
Okay, so Green and White Grocery, recently designated as an official historic landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you just briefly tell us why that building is important to Austin?
I mean, it's such an iconic location and the building, and
yep.
I love that place. And
I did too. I'm totally biased.
It started out, as like a grocery store, and in the 30s, during a time of intense racial and ethnic segregation in town, it's transformed over time. It was a grocery store. They sold tamales out of there. It was kind of like a community sort of hub in the neighborhood, and then it became the Botanica now. And so what I love so much about Green and White is it tells a very dynamic story of East Austin and a story of East Austin's resilience, in the face of so much change. You can chart the history of East Austin through this building and these different stories and different people that have intersected with it. But yeah, John being the third generation owner too, it's so special and precious. And we really wanted to help them get that designation so that it could stay there forever, And so one of our interns and one of our board members, they put together the nomination packet and they put together all the research, and then it got approved. We're working with people so that they can't demolish it, No. It's going to be there forever. It's ours forever now.
Hey y'all, it's Nikki. If your mom is like my mom, the one thing she really wants from you this Mother's Day is to see you. This year, you can help her do that all the time by giving her an Aura digital picture frame, which Wirecutter says is the best digital photo frame. My mom, Daisy, loves to be surrounded by pictures of her kids, her grandkids, and the memories we've made together over the years. But y'all, she has no more room on her walls. So this year, I'm giving her an Aura frame, which can hold a crazy amount of photos, and it'll keep her in the loop. We just had a family vacation in Denver, and so instead of wrangling a photo album out of our phones, my sister and I can just upload them directly to the frame. Plus, my sister is always digitizing old photos, and we can send her those too, so none of them will get lost. Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver matte frame. That's Aura, AURA frames.com. Promo code is CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey CityCast, something I appreciate about the Cozy Earth Mother's Day sale is that they know motherhood looks different on everyone. So whether you're raising kids, dogs, or Kane, all moms work hard and they deserve comfort. So let me tell you about these Cozy Earth sheets. They feel like cool water in a sort of, is this the Ritz-Carlton or my own bedroom kind of way. The pajamas are what I imagine celebrity moms sleep in, buttery soft. You're looking for the right gift because the women who raised you feel like home, and they are going to love Cozy Earth bamboo pajamas, and I know this because it's 3:24 p.m. and I'm still wearing mine. To celebrate moms everywhere, Cozy Earth is supporting your favorite local podcast and giving our listeners a special promo. 45% off site-wide. This is a luxury brand, and that is a mind-blowing deal. Use Cozy Austin to take advantage of 45% off at CozyEarth.com.
So when something is deemed a historical landmark or an official historical landmark, does that mean that the city helps financially, or does it just mean that it cannot be demolished?
Right now, Austin has a tax incentive program for property owners of historic landmarks. It's structured differently depending on if it's a residential one versus an income-producing one.
So what do you think is the most underrated historic place in Austin?
one of my favorite places in Austin is the Rogers Washington Holy Cross neighborhood in East Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this with like a sense of personal pride because I worked with them a few years ago to make a documentary about their neighborhood's history. So I feel very attached to that neighborhood and that story. But it's such an incredible story of like Black resilience in Austin in the face of Jim Crow segregation and, you know, predatory housing practices. And it's amazing. So in Rogers Washington Holy Cross was a neighborhood that was developed in, well, now Central East Austin, but was more Far East Austin at the time. It's at MLK and like Chestnut. So this was a kind of neighborhood that was developed by a group of Black professionals who kind of wanted the American suburban dream for themselves. And so they were living closer to East Avenue, now I-35, and they wanted to move out and have a little bit more space. But, you know, because of redlining and restrictive covenants and the 1928 master plan, like they could only be in East Austin, and it was really hard for them to get loans. And this is a really common story across the United States, especially in the South. You know, it's like, okay, what do? We create our own institutions, our own wealth building mechanisms. They financed loans for each other and were able to build these really, some of them are incredibly architecturally interesting. And then others they're more modest, but they are still speaking to kind of the pattern of development, like more minimal traditional, but there's some really amazing mid-century modern houses in there. And then more importantly, like the people that lived in this concentrated area is like mind-blowing. One of them was John Q. Taylor King. He was the longest standing president of Huston-Tillotson University. There was Norman Scales Sr. He was a Tuskegee Airman. Brenda Malik, still with us, lives there. She was one of the first Black broadcasters on television in Austin and just a fabulous lady all around. The Calhoun family lives there. Mr. Calhoun was the principal of Keeling Junior High, which was the Black middle school in East Austin until desegregation happened. So just the stories there are crazy, amazing. The people that live there are wonderful. And what I love about it is that it's really intergenerational, and they're lucky because their neighborhood is still relatively intact. You know, it's like second, third generations are living in these homes. And really what's so inspiring about that neighborhood is they saw what was happening, the demolitions that were happening in their neighborhood, and they knew how hard their families and their parents fought to have these homes. Like it was no easy feat to just to exist in this neighborhood and have these houses. And so they were like, what can we do? And through 100% grassroots advocacy, they became a local historic district. It's so cool.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah. David
Chapel is my family church.
It's the best. It's the best.
Not for nothing. As someone who grew up there, it feels really good to drive through that neighborhood and see houses that, like, as a kid, I used to be inside of, and I used to ride my bike around. It feels really good. It feels like one of the few places left that's home. If you know what I mean, like it feels one of the few places left on the east side that I'm like, oh my God, this is still my childhood. Miss Banks' house and this house and the Mays house. And yeah, it feels really, really wonderful to just have that little bit of
familiarity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are the next fights over historic preservation going to be in Austin? Do you have any predictions, especially with all of this I-35 expansion and all this stuff happening?
Yeah. The 35 thing, it's kind of one of those unfortunate, like, nothing doing when it comes to the state sometimes.
Right. Yep.
I think it's just going to be more of the same. I mean, I just learned that, like, I don't know if Cenote is a legacy business or not, but, like, Cenote is closing down and they're in a historic building.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
It's just kind of like whack-a-mole. So we want everybody else to be, like, preservationists too, you know, and understand that it's not just about the fancy places on the west side. It's about all of us, you know?
Right.
And all these stories.
Do you think it is too late to maintain the history of East Austin, of the east side?
No, can't be. There's so much there. It's never too late. I'll never, you know.
I love that.
Like when they get the last building, that's when it's too late. That's what I think, you know?
That's what's up. I love that.
Just that's like, they can pry it out of my cold dead hands because I'm always at City Hall being like, no, save this one too.
I feel the same way.
And even still, like, even if they tear every single building down, like, The whole city is laced with the history of Black and brown people, even the places where they weren't allowed to live for a long time, you know?
Right.
So you can pretend it doesn't exist, you can demolish it, but their history is woven into every piece of the city, and you can't get rid of it. That soul, that spirit is still there, you know what I mean? Even if it gets demolished. And so
that's the mic drop right there. Megan, thank you so much for being with me today. This has been great.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Preservation Austin's website in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.